Our next speaker is Jacky Foucher from the agency Creative. And we have a different perspective coming from outside of the public sector. And perhaps he can tell us a little bit about how, is it really 10% or is it more, the new ideas? So Jacky, it's all yours.
Okay, good morning. It may sound a bit curious for you, but because it's not really the purpose here, but I often wonder, why am I such a big fan of sports? I've even already found myself watching curling and enjoying it. How come? I'm a designer. I spent 2 years on the creation of an innovation lab for the French regional level. And I mean, I've been very busy recently, and why do I need to keep up with sports news almost every day? A few weeks ago, I saw a movie that helped me understand this better. That film is called Moneyball, based on a true story. It focuses on the general manager of a baseball club who tries to come up with new ways to drive his small team to success. I really enjoyed it and learned later that the movie came from a book whose subtitle was The Art of Winning an Unfair Game. Wait a minute, that's it. This movie actually talks about my job. If you ever tried to innovate in the public sector or elsewhere, this sentence must indeed sound familiar to you. Innovation is unfair. You can be the best and lose. You can select all the best players. You can call them territorial agents if you want. Match them with the best technicians and lose. You can even be truly innovative, and lose. And sometimes you can also play with unadapted tools, tight deadlines, and people who are not self-confident and win. Is innovation simply the same as baseball then? And if this weird affirmation comes true, what can we learn about this? Moneyball is about a minor team with a low budget. The Oakland Athletics. They played very well in the previous season and even reached the playoffs. But here is the problem. As they have no budget, they instantly lose all their best players who are poached by big teams. They had one little success and everything must be built from the ground up again. Doesn't this remind you something, innovators? That's exactly what happened to us working on the lab for the French administration. You know, once one original project succeeds, you start facing managers who want you to do it again, but faster, in a larger scale, and in the good old classic way. For example, having to convince everyone before moving forward. The only thing the general manager Bilibin knows is that he won't be able to directly compete with his rivals in the purchase of new stores. He just can't. As a result, he accepts the fact that he'll have to question the meaning of the situation and to look at it in a different way to be able to find out solutions. That's often the first step you need to take before trying to be creative. Not the easiest one, though. I'm sure everybody here have already heard people, even colleagues, saying beautiful sentences like, "We don't have the choice. That's how it works." As a designer, I hear it all the time. And apparently, Bilibin decided to go beyond it. He might just as well give up, but he doesn't. That's the magic of sport. The funny part of it, and what makes it forever interesting to play with, is that there's still hope. This is exactly the same kind of persistent feeling which makes us designers completely convinced that there's always a better way to satisfy one need. That we can make it. To be honest, sometimes it doesn't work. But at other time, the small team managed to defeat the big one. Yes, I haven't told you yet, innovation is mainly assigned to small teams with low resources. Now that we see that context and objectives are finally quite the same in baseball and design, let's take a closer look at the way Billy Beane, the baseball innovator, reacted and what other challenges he encountered. Statistics have always been important in baseball, but Beane was the first using it at a high level and with more efficiency. To do so, he didn't collect more data than others. He only tried to see which category of data was the most relevant. Now, things are getting a bit technical here, but as most of the teams focused on stats like batting average, Beane realized that other criteria like on-base percentage were better indicators. I don't know anything in baseball, but I can tell you this is another crucial step, the result of a deep analysis and knowledge of what the situation truly is and how it truly works. Clearly, a lot of competencies are needed here to achieve that kind of insight, but also a strong capacity to step back. In design, we know that it can take a lot of time and it's hard to find it in a single person. We always need to collaborate and we must be able to understand specialists of all kinds. In fact, Beane, as a former professional player, was very knowledgeable about baseball, but it wasn't enough. He met statistician Paul de Podesta and they managed to collaborate. One knew how to use stats and the other one knew baseball, but that's only together that they were able to analyze the situation and to elaborate an original solution. Being together convinced, it was also a lot more easier to move forward. Using their new strategy to the full, their little design lab finally put together a whole team of underrated players. That's probably not the kind of innovation people dream of. But they knew why they made these choices, and they believed in it. So the season begins. These guys put this strange prototype on the field, and it doesn't work at all. Beane was so obsessed with his new tactic that he forgot one major issue. He didn't share it with anyone. He sort of tried with his recruitment staff, but didn't manage to do it, ended up firing everyone instead. That's also a solution at some point. But now there's the coach, the man who selects who will play and how during the game. And this man is not convinced at all. He's still using the few players already engaged in the past season instead of the new ones being recruited. Beane has this big revolutionary idea, and this one man is avoiding all the experimentation. He cannot fire him, but he also needs to fully test his idea. What can he do? He decides to move forward with the plan and sell all the coach's favorite players. Just sell them. In public administration, in talking about innovation, that's exactly what we call hacking the administration. And I must be clear, we often have to. For example, take this time when we covered advertising posters with homemade prints in a few streets in order to test citizen reactions. We needed to quickly know if the message we printed could have an effect. Nobody would have given us an authorization ever. But everybody was very happy to see the result. So Billy Beane has now hacked all his staff. His team is on the field and it still doesn't work. Actually, there's one last big character in this story. Probably the main one, the players. That's the moment when Bean starts to communicate his vision and takes time to share it with every player and explain them why they're here, what he would like them to do, and for what ultimate purpose. He doesn't keep the statistic for himself. He uses them as a resource for everyone. And guess what? It works. Such a success that the Athletics are competitive against the major teams of the league. Yo-ho. Yeah. Have you ever heard of empowerment? Billy Bean apparently discovered how powerful it can be. Well, that's a lot of similarities, isn't it? If I chose to tell you all this story today, it's clearly to share my vision of design and innovation. I've tried many times to explain it in a classic way, analysis, research, development, and so on. But every time something was missing, the essential part of my job actually, the human experience. As sport is a lot more widely practiced than design, I hope this extended comparison will help you to intimately understand what kind of competencies are involved here and to remind that the human dimension is by far more important to innovation than the technical aspects. Taking it into consideration should ensure good results. Design and innovation, much like sports team management, is not about winning all the time. It's about trying to find better solutions all the time. Whatever the constraints are, being a bit sad when it doesn't work, but using it to continuously improve your strategy, and, above all, being willing to continue playing. Working with a few innovative stars can help a bit, but it's not enough. One needs to think about the team. One needs to think in terms of collective improvement. After 2 years working in the French administration, we had a few successful projects we could proudly show, like trophies. But as soon as we left, they were only souvenirs. Our main realization was a lot more human. A core team of 6 territorial agents dedicated to innovation was created. They have practiced innovation principles with us since the beginning, and most of all, they believe in it. So much that their objective today isn't to design better solutions for their colleague, but with their colleague, becoming this way a bigger and bigger team. And this can start with really little changes. Here is an example. During our experimentation, we were sometimes absent for a few weeks. One day, coming back, we discovered that the last notes on the paperboard of the meeting room were ours. The reality suddenly revealed we were the only ones making a strong use of paperboards. During most of meetings, everyone always writes in his own notes on his own little sheet of paper. How can you hope being creative in such conditions? That's exactly like keeping the ball for himself, never trying to pass it. Hard to score a goal. Now we know that at least 6 agents make a big use of paperboard to share their ideas, to discuss, to be sure everyone is talking about the same thing, to imagine solutions, in other words, to collaborate. As for sports, we never know how it will end, but even if they are a very little team, I certainly hope that they will win soon. Somehow, I'm sure they will.
Thank you, Jacky. I never thought that a Frenchman would be teaching me an American about baseball, but it happens. And I think that what we see here is the importance of a story both to communicate what it is that you're trying to do, but also about the narrative to motivate the team. And I think that comes through very well in your presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Jacky? Or I'd be also interested to hear if people have examples about how they've turned what they're doing, their innovation experience, into a story, similar to what Jacky's been doing. Yes, over here in front. Can we bring a mic, please? Can you introduce yourself as well?
Yes. Well, my name is Rui Patricio from Portugal, and I really like your presentation. And about Moneyball, it's a great movie. And my question is about analytics. From your experience, how can you balance and combine analytics with creativity?
Can you repeat, please? How can I balance?
Well, you were talking about Moneyball.
Yeah.
Moneyball is about analytics. So,
yeah.
Okay. And I would like to know your opinion and maybe some insights about the way you are managing innovation. And you talked about creativity, about people. How can you combine this with the analytic tools? Because from my perspective, it's very important to have both.
That's exactly it. You got the answer. We never use only one part of the problem. We always try to keep all the data, and I mean, there's not only number in data. There's also a lot of impressions, a lot of sensibility, and we have to keep all those things together in order to be able to answer in an original way.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Anyone? So also, if there are examples of stories, I think that this is one of the things, it's been coming through all of the presentations we've had so far, building this relationship with the citizens.